Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I had a pretty busy reading month and I read 10 books overall, which is probably the most amount of books I've read in a month in a long time. But I loved a lot of them and I've been loving book content lately, so I thought I would share my favorite books with you all. I'm not anticipating to read 10 books every month, but it was a prolific month. I had some good reads and I really enjoyed my times. So like I said, I read 10 books in, which is pretty crazy. I was not anticipating that I would read that many, but it has brought me ahead of my reading goal for the year. Of the 10 books that I read in February, I loaned 9 of them from my local library. So this is your reminder to always try your local library. You don't know what gems they will have. It's a free service. They're incredible for communities, and the more we can do to support them, it's just better for everyone. I've kind of made a loose rule with myself that I should be trying to read books from the library first and then buying books as I enjoy them. I just love going to the library and browsing and getting to take all the books home, and you don't have to pay any money, and it's just such a fun experience. So definitely check out your local library and utilize this amazing resource that our communities have. As part of the 10 books that I read, 4 of them were from the same series. I read the Rose Hill series by Elsie. I'd heard a lot about Elsie before, but hadn't read anything from her, so I was really excited to dive into this world. I thought they were really cute books. They were really fast, quick, entertaining. I thought the banter was really good in all of them, and I really enjoyed the element of found family that you found throughout these books and how that developed. What I didn't know going into Elsie books is they all also have a concurrent theme. And the theme of the Rose Hill series is single dad. Now, each of the male characters in each book was a single dad in one way or the other, which I didn't know going in and was a interesting surprise. I thought it was a fun narrative device, and I thought it was a really interesting way to tell different stories and add some more depth. The first book in the Rose Hill series is Wild Love by Elsie. This book follows Rosie, who's our female main character. She grew up in Rose Hill or around Rose Hill, which is in the countryside of Canada. Rosie was kind of the one who made it out of her small town. She left for college, she worked in the city, and she was kind of growing and thriving away from home until a few things happen that she wasn't happy with. She loses her job and she ends up having to move back to Rose Hill. It also follows Ford, who was just named the world's hottest billionaire. He also grew up in Rose Hill and is best friends with Rosie's older brother. Ford was also coming back to Rose Hill because he wanted a quieter, simpler life than the notoriety that came with being a billionaire in the city. He was looking for more purpose and a reason for life, not just to make money, but more of a deeper meaning to what he did every day. I really enjoyed the banter of this book. I thought Rosie and Ford had good banter. I loved the email excerpts that came in. I thought that was a really fun way to discuss things and just something I could see people my age doing. I really liked the relationship building, and I also really liked, because they've known each other their whole life, I loved the flashbacks and memories and new ways of understanding what had happened with them previously before they both left Rose Hill. But I did enjoy it. It was a fun read, and I ended up rating this 3.75 stars. The second book in the series is Wild Eyes. Wild Eyes follows West, who is Rosie's brother from the first book. He owns like a horse adjustment center on his property, and he has 2 children from a previous marriage that didn't end well, but his kids are his entire world, and he speaks so highly of them, and his actions really show that through the book. This book also follows Skylar, who was a child star, kind of turned pop star, and is escaping Rose Hill to work with Ford from Wild Love, but also to re-find herself. There are a few things that have happened to her recently that have kind of shown that people see her as more of a money-making machine than a human. She wasn't happy in her relationship, she wasn't happy with where her career was going, and she just wanted to find herself and rediscover who she is and why she's doing this. So Skylar ends up staying on West's property in his guest house, which is next door to Ford's recording studio, and the two kind of form a bond and kind of end up sharing this habitual relationship, if that makes sense. Skylar kind of attaches herself to West's rituals and his daily tasks as a horse trainer and agistment lodger, and helping out with that and finding a sense of calm and normalcy and just peace in the simplicities of his everyday life. She also forms a really strong bond with West's kids. They are both unique in their own way, and she is able to navigate that relationship really beautifully, and it really, I think, showed that the relationship was more than just sex and lust. It was much more of a deeper connection, and you could see how that relationship would play out as it developed. Again, I really enjoyed the banter here. I really liked that you saw Skylar grow from what I guess you perceive to be a conceited, maybe not really sure about her at the start. She really found herself and developed herself and stood up for herself, and I thought that was a really beautiful story. I loved the relationship between her and West, and especially with the kids brought in, I thought it was really sweet. It was a cute book. I rated it 3.75 stars. The next book was Wild Side, which is book 3 in the Rose Hill series. This book follows Tabitha, who is the chef at the town's cafe. Tabitha is also reeling from the loss of her older sister and being thrown into guardianship of her nephew. The book also follows Reese, who previously had lived next door to Tabitha's sister and nephew, and technically has legal guardianship of the nephew, and is trying to navigate that situation with not wanting to take the child away from a family that is currently present to looking after the child and making sure he is, he's set up for life, I guess. I really enjoyed this book. It covered a lot more deeper topics that was really, I thought was unpacked well and was discussed in a way that felt really nuanced and just made it a more interesting read. It tackled subjects such as addiction, substance abuse, manipulation from the sister. You can see how she kind of manipulated how Tabitha and Reese understood what was happening, and they had to unpack that without having her there to blame, I guess. And it also navigated difficult family dynamic. It was definitely one of my favorites. I felt a lot of kinship with Tabitha. I thought she was such a beautiful female main character, and I loved seeing how their love grew and how they really championed loving this little boy and protecting him. And they talked about, going to therapy and making sure they did it all right, which I thought was really beautiful. Now, if you haven't read this book, skip forward about 15 seconds. But if you were to tell me that my favorite book had a male main character that was a wrestler, like a WWE wrestler, I wouldn't have believed you. But I thought it was a funny little addition and it made me giggle, so I enjoyed it. I rated the book 4 stars. The last book of the series is Wildcard. This book follows Bash, who is friends with all the other boys, but he's quite a bit older than them. I think he's about 40 something, who is a seasonal firefighter and carpenter that works in Rose Hill. It also follows Gwen, who is a free spirit yoga instructor who just moved to Rose Hill to cover someone's leave while they're off gallivanting the world. Bash and Gwen met about a year before the start of the book, and that's detailed in the very first chapter. They had this really serendipitous moment that was really sweet and natural, and really, it was like a perfect meet cute moment. But then for a few reasons, they never ended up reaching out to each other, and they didn't find each other until the start of the book, when you find out that Gwen is dating Bash's recently known about son, which is a completely ridiculous dynamic. But it made for an entertaining book. Again, felt a lot of kinship to Gwen. She was a gorgeous female main character, and I thought was just one of the kindest souls I've ever read about. I loved Bash was like the embodiment of, if he wanted to, he would. He did whatever he could for Gwen whenever he could. Because he was older, I suppose, he was more organized. He had his life together and was able to really be a stable man in Gwen's life, and I thought that was really lovely. I enjoyed the book, and Clive was ridiculous in this book, but he was good fun, and I thought it was a really nice ending. I think I was ready for the series to end at this point, but I enjoyed it, and I rated Wildcard 4 stars. My next book, I moved into more of a fantasy, and I actually audiobooked this. I rented my audiobook from my library, but I have bought the physical copy now because, how could I not? It's beautiful. My 5th book was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne. I loved the Hunger Games book when I was younger. I read them a lot. I used to go to the midnight premieres for the movies, and I just love the world and love the strength of the characters. So I was really excited to read this. It felt so good to be back in a universe that I knew from my childhood, and I think now I need to go and read all of the Hunger Games books again because I haven't read them since I was a teenager. This book follows Haymitch's Quarter Quell. Haymitch was the mentor for Peter and Katniss in their Hunger Games, so this follows his Hunger Games, which happened 24 years before the first Hunger Games movie. So in Haymitch's book, there are 4 tributes per district, so 2 girls and 2 boys. I thought the interesting part of this book was that you really got to see the I guess, more of the behind the scenes and the production that is the Hunger Games. So there was a lot more talk about the game makers' involvement. There was a lot more talk about the filming, the production, the editing, and I guess the propaganda and marketing side of the Hunger Games. I thought that was a really interesting element that I think you understand from reading the first books and watching the movies, but it was interesting to dive deeper into this in Sunrise on the Reaping. It was also interesting to read about a slightly more immature capital than the one we know from the Hunger Games original books. I think if you've read this, you will know what I'm talking about. I don't want to spoil it because I think it is a really incredible read, but seeing what happened at the Reaping, what happened more in the background of the production, like I was saying, what happened at the tribute parade, whatever they call it. I just couldn't say enough good things about this book. I didn't have any complaints. I think it's really hard to describe without spoiling it because I wasn't necessarily expecting some of the elements. So if you love this universe, please read this book. It was so good. I can't wait to reread this again, probably before the movie comes out later this year. And I loved it. This was my first 5-star read of the month. I'm so happy. And also look at this gorgeous cover, like the best. So book 6, I actually ended up getting really sick. I was in bed for about a week, so I sped through some really quick, easy books, which was a nice distraction from sleeping. First book I read in bed, and my book number 6 was The Inheritance Games. I picked this up again from the library. It was a bit more youthful than I typically read, but that made it super easy to read, easy to follow, and when I was sick, that's kind of exactly what I needed. Book follows Avery, who is a high school student who's very smart but is struggling financially in life. She lives with her sister and her sister's toxic boyfriend until one day she gets called to the principal's office and is kind of whisked away by a young man and a legal team to go to the will reading of Sir Hawthorne, which is a man that she has never met before. At the will reading, she learns that she inherits billions of dollars, practically this man's entire familial estate, and she can't think of the reason. She doesn't know this man, she doesn't know the family, she's not part of the family. So the book follows her story of trying to understand and navigate this new season of her life, how she navigates the billions, and also trying to understand why Hawthorne left her his whole estate. To complicate it, there are 4 Hawthorne grandsons, all of whom are attentive and charming and charismatic and trying to get close to Avery, but also trying to understand with her why she was left the fortune. Throughout this book, you kind of learn that Hawthorne was a bit of a trickster, loved a puzzle, loved a game, would love an escape room if he was alive still, and liked to play games and riddles with the boys. So throughout this book, you're kind of searching for and finding clues to get to the bottom of why Avery was left this fortune. I did enjoy this book. I thought it definitely was young, but it gripped me enough that I was entertained and enjoyed it overall. I still think I will read the next book maybe another time when I'm sick and just need something easy to read, but overall I rated it 3.5 stars. My second sick read was Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. Again, I have a few Ali Hazelwood books behind me. I've read Love Hypothesis and I'm planning on reading the rest, so this was my second book of hers. This book followed Maya, who is mid-20s, still trying to figure out her life, and is currently in Italy. Maya's parents actually passed away when she was younger, so she went and lived with her brother, who I think is like 15 years older than her. So they have a much stronger bond and connection. I don't really know why that was relevant, but it is. It also follows Connor. Connor is the best friend of Maya's older brother. He is the co-owner of their biotech investment firm. He is broody, he is mysterious, he's sullen, and of course, he's the love of Maya's life. So the story follows the lead up to Maya's brother's wedding. So it follows them arriving in Italy. They're all sharing this beautiful mansion on the coast and just enjoying life. Maya's trying to navigate why it is that Connor won't be with her, and then you also get flashbacks of the ways that her and Connor have interacted in the past and why they're so in love but not together. Now, if you read this book, you will notice one through line, which is that Connor is older. And I say that because it is mentioned almost every other page. It is constantly mentioned, it's rubbed in your face. We are well aware that Connor is about 15 years older than Maya. You will never forget that fact when you read this book. It's so common. Overall, I think the romance build was slow but good. I really enjoyed the flashbacks, so you can see, I guess, Connor's more protective side and how he's different with Maya than he is to everyone else. I think they address the age gap really well. They address the position of power. Connor and Maya's brother are quite wealthy because of their work, so that, along with Connor's age and how that kind of puts Maya in a certain position, that was addressed really well. I did enjoy it, and I think I'll still keep reading Ali Hazelwood, definitely, because I have a few on my TBR. But overall, I rated this 3.5 stars. The next book I read was much anticipated read for me, and I was so excited to read it. So I rented it from my local library. I don't have it. Oh, I bought it today. I literally just bought this today. But my next book was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I had only read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid previously, and after reading this, I'm definitely going to be reading more. But this book follows Vanessa and Joan in the 1980s in, I guess, just after the space race mix, but they are two astronaut candidates at NASA. Joan is a physicist teacher. She's a brilliant scientist and as soon as she learned that NASA were accepting women candidates, applied and kept applying until she got in, and has just dreamed about this for as long as she knew that she could. She's steadfast in her aspirations. She's kind, she's timid, she's reserved. The book also navigates her relationship with her sister Barbara and Barbara's little girl Franny. The book also follows Vanessa. Vanessa is sprightly, she's confident, she's steadfast, headstrong, and unappeased with the limitations that come with being a woman, especially in the 1980s, when her aspirations far exceed what the world believes that she can do. This book follows both of their journeys at NASA, how their lives entangle, and how their journeys and bumps navigate through until their first mission. So you find out really early on that there's a mission that doesn't go as planned, and you kind of then go back in time and work up to the mission. I really didn't expect to love a book about astronauts in the 1980s as much as I did, but this is just one of my favorite books that I've read in a very, very long time. I feel really similar to Joan in a lot of ways, in her slowly discovering who she is, understanding who she is, and her navigating her newer understanding of the world, of religion, of everything. I just thought it was so beautiful, and I can't wait, now that I have a physical copy, to go back through and reread some passages and highlight them, because especially when she describes God and religion, it was just so akin to how I see the world, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite books. I loved the ending. I was so broken by it, but it was perfect. I sobbed, like audibly sobbed, and I sent this photo to my friend. It was so beautiful, and just knowing them and seeing how their lives could take shape from this point forward was just so beautiful, and I really hope that they got the lifetime that they deserved. It was an easy 5-star for me, and I can't wait to read this again. The next book I read was an audiobook that I borrowed from the library. I, like everyone else in the world last year, was obsessed with The Summer I Turned Pretty, and I am desperate for the day that Conrad Fisher is back on my screens every Wednesday. It was such a wonderful joy to be a part of, and I had never actually read the book, so I thought I would go back through and listen to them. They were really short, really easy to listen to. It follows Belly's annual summer trip to Cousins, where she stays with Susanna and her two sons, Conrad and Jeremiah. And as we expect, a love triangle ensues. Of course, if you've watched the show, you know, but there is something else brewing in the background, and that kind of impacts how the boys act. It kind of impacts how everyone's acting this season, and it just adds another element to an otherwise pretty simple story. I did enjoy it. It was really familiar and lovely to be back in Cousins, where I spent so much time last year. It was really cool because I'd already seen the show to visualize Belly and the boys and the settings, and it was actually narrated by Lola Tung, who played Belly, and I thought that was really cool. So it felt just like watching the TV show. I did in the books find Belly to be quite frustrating and irritating. She is 15 in these books, and I completely relate to how she was at 15, because I'm sure I did the same things, but as a 29-year-old now, I was just a bit like, oh, really? Like, it just felt really immature, which is fair because it is a young adult book, so I just found that a bit frustrating. But overall, I loved the story. I still love the TV show, and I think I might have to watch it again pretty soon. But I rated the book 3.25 stars. My last book of the month, I just picked up this from the library. This is The Striker by Ana Huang. It follows Asha, who is a uber wealthy, highly skilled, and mega popular soccer player. He's not doing so well publicly at the moment. He's kind of in a string of controversies because he left his home team to go to their rivals mid-season. He's also at war with his club's captain, Vincent. The book also follows Scarlett, who is a previous prima ballerina, now a ballet teacher, and the sister to Vincent. Again, of course, we all saw this coming. Scarlett, Vincent, and Asher are thrust together for the summer. The boys' coach determines that they need to be practicing ballet footwork and agility for the summer and hopefully start playing well together because they need to for the sake of the team. However, Vincent has to leave really abruptly to go and help some family members, so Asher and Scarlett are left pretty much to their own devices, and what do we expect happens? They fall in love. It was a story of two people who didn't mean to fall in love but definitely did. I did enjoy this book. I think it tackled a lot of really interesting topics. It wasn't just a romance. There was elements of like familial obligations, familial roles, trauma, chronic illness, and I guess navigating a new world. I thought the romance was cute. It was really sweet to read. Did this book need to be 500 pages? No, it was a slog to read. It was good and I enjoyed it, but I feel like it definitely could have been shorter. Overall, I rated it a 3.75 stars. And there we go. Those are all of the books that I really enjoyed it. Definitely stay tuned and I'll be sure to keep sharing my reading with you. Right, I've got to run off. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I'll see you soon.